Hey everybody, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you here on AM 950 Radio. But we do not have a joyous topic because we're watching the Trump administration follow through on yet another promise. Now they've done that. They are doing what they said they were going to do. And we're looking at least one student who is going to be deported because he has been supportive of Palestinians. We saw this wave of demonstrations over the past year and some change, quite frankly. And interestingly, driven by a lot of young Jewish people, a lot of young Jewish activists who are personally affronted by what's happening in Israel. Um, they want to save the country and they want to save people. And they're saying, wait a minute, we've got to go another way. And somehow or another in the United States, we are seeing ourselves restricted. We're not able to talk about it. We're not able to march. Now, not only are we facing deportations in schools, we are looking at Americans who could face prison time. We need to talk about that. And Columbia University is an interesting case because this young man came out of Columbia, permanent resident of the United States, if you will. But $400 million in federal aid has been withdrawn by the Trump administration. But there's something else. Epic Times, that outlet, um, said that really it's deeper than that because Attorney Darrell Jones, the Transformative Justice Coalition, and of course, Ariel Gold, Executive Director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and historian Dr. Rachel Idebuff. My sister, I haven't seen you in a minute, University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. They they get about $5 billion in research grants. That could be withheld too. Did you know that this private university is getting this much money from the federal government? So how free are they really? And I want to talk with you about the protections that this young man has and the protections that Americans have. So I want you to weigh in, everybody. Weigh in right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on AM 950 Radio, the voice of Progressive Minnesota. Go to their website. Let them know what you're thinking. Go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. And of course, I'm on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky. That's social. Just key in Santita Jackson. You can find me, and you can also find me on X, but that's at Santita J. That's my account. So you know what? Let's legally look at what's happening. Darrell Jones. Um, President Trump said that um, all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows legal protocol protest. American students will be permanently expelled, uh, or depending, or they could be charged with a crime. They could go to prison. He said, and guess what? This is the first of many arrests to come. So he said, we're at the beginning of this. Is this an attack on free speech, Attorney Jones?
Uh, uh, hello, Santita, and I'm just flabbergasted. Yes, it's 100% attack on free speech. It's not ancillary. It's not touching on it. It is a direct hit on free speech. That's what this is. It is targeted. Free speech is the bullseye of what is going on here, and what the president is doing is that not only is he hitting Maud Khalil, but he's hitting everybody else that's in a similarly positioned as him. That same positioning. He wants to have that chilling effect for any of the students that are there and that are going to be protesting in something that's against what the president believes to be his policies and his interests. So what they're attempting to do here is a direct hit at the First Amendment. They don't care about the First Amendment. That's the message that's being sent. That the Second Amendment bows to the interest of the president, That's the message that's being sent here with what he's doing with this young guy out of Columbia University, and it's just a horrible message, I believe, that's being sent. Here you have Mahmoud, who is a legal permanent resident, right? His
So
attorneys later.
if you're a permanent resident, pardon the interruption. If you're a permanent resident, what does that mean?
Yeah, I can't get into all the intricacies of the permanency of the residency
Uh,
because
he's not. So he's not. So my question is, he's not a citizen.
he's not a citizen. That is correct. He is not
Okay,
a citizen, so he doesn't have all citizenship rights as
right.
we would,
But he
as one
does
would
have the
think.
right to stay.
But he does have the right to say
Okay.
absolutely, and in addition to that, he also has the green card, which allows him to work, and and everything else that he all the other rights that he has, that flow from that. That's all present. One of the interesting things that the ICE agents, that the Custom Enforcement said, Immigration Custom Enforcement officer said when they came to arrest Brother Khalil, was that they were revoking his permanent residency. That they were, it had been revoked, and it just raises all kinds of legal questions, all kinds of uncertainty for a lot of other folks that are similarly situated, which is precisely what the administration wants to have happen. They want people to be uncertain, unsure. It's the chilling effect. Don't try it because you don't know what may happen to you. What we're doing to uh, Mahmoud Khalil could be you. And that's the message that they're trying to send. And the more amplification they get of that, the more impact, the more influence. That's precisely what they want to have happen, is to scare people.
Well, Mahmoud Khalil is a permanent resident of the United States. Um, very educated, highly educated, came out of Columbia University, and he is facing deportation. Dr. Rachel Ida Buff, you are an historian at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. You're also an activist, and you, as a professor, you are watching. We watched this wave of protests across campuses last year, which, quite frankly, was stunning. And since those protests began, there has been a movement to ensure that they not happen anymore. They're being thwarted in all kinds of ways. Has this had does this young man's deportation, is it having a chilling effect, or will people be emboldened? I mean, how is this being received?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we're seeing this, and I am a scholar of McCarthyism, and McCarthyism works by scaring people,
Mm.
right? You're scared to say what you want to say in your class. You're scared to say what you want to say on campus. I'm dealing with some foreign-born student activists who are freaking out because
Mhm.
they have what uh, Mahmoud Khalil has, a green card, which I wanted to just make sure of this, Daryl. The 14th Amendment says due process for all, not due process for citizens,
Mhm.
right? So with a green card, you have due process rights, correct?
That is correct.
That's what I thought. I keep having to reread the 14th Amendment because they're chipping away at it. But this is a terrorizing impulse, and I do want to say that as a Jewish person, I very much resent that my putative safety is being used as an excuse for this untoward fascist repression. We had an encampment on my campus. There were some beautiful interfaith Shabbats led by my chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace. There were Muslim services. There were Christian and Muslim people saying, I've never been to a Shabbat service before. This is very lovely. It was a space of fellowship and visioning. There was no violence against anyone. And I've asked because I keep hearing like, oh, Jewish students were menaced, Jewish students were menaced. And I care about Jewish students. I have two of them, my daughters, and I keep asking, like, please come talk to me. Please tell me. Zilch on this campus. Zilch. But does that stop the Milwaukee Jewish Federation from raising the hue and cry about anti Semitism? No, it does not. And what that is terrorism. Not to put too fine a point on it, because what they're saying is we're gonna bait you. We're going to accuse you of being anti-Semitic. We're going to accuse you of being this mythical Hamas support network, which is an invention of the war on terror. You know, it's deeply Islamophobic. We're gonna bait you with all these things, and then you'll be too scared to do anything. And what we see with Mamoun Khalil, with the students on my campus, is I don't think it's going to work. Is it going to scare us? Yes. Are there going to be losses? Yes. You know, I think it scares some people. It scares many of us. But I think that we keep going in the ways that we can go. Like, we are having a big protest here in Milwaukee on Friday in support of Mahmoud Khalil. And I would be really careful towards foreign-born students about attending. They have to make their own decisions, but like, we now know that they will take any excuse. You know, just the story of what happened in that graduate student housing in Columbia, where the ICE agents had busted in. They did not have a judicial warrant. They have to have a judicial warrant. They first said, your student visa has expired. When it was explained to them that it was no longer a student visa, but a green card, they invented this. They're like, oh, well, your green card is revoked. That is not how that works, right? You have to like get a green card revoked. You have to get a judge to sign a warrant. You can't just like be marauding around. But sympathy for the devil here, the ICE agents have a quota of 75 people, 75 detentions a day, which is another form of terror, because they're not going to be careful. They're not going to care if you're brown or black, if you're a legal resident, if you're a citizen, if you're undocumented. They don't care. They're just going to sweep you because they've got 75 people a day to detain and deport. So this whole system is just going to be really terrorizing and difficult, I think.
When you look at what is happening right now and you study McCarthyism, are there any parallels, or can you give us a parallel to another historical moment?
I mean, I go to that. I mean, the thing about Joe McCarthy, senator from Wisconsin, that we under remember, and I have to say that Rachel Maddow has done really good work on this. He was not fascistic. He was hanging out with actual Nazis who wanted to get back in power and thought they could work here. So his attempt to subvert American democracy, his treason against the people of America, was not just baiting activists like me as communists and godless whatevers, making all that stuff up, just like Hamas Support Network. It was attempting to restore the regime that murdered Jews. This is what I say to Jewish people. It is never in our best interests to get behind people like that. Those are, you know, they start coming for, you know, the Palestinians, they start coming for the leftists. They're gonna come for the Jews. It always happens that way. That's who Joe McCarthy was, and we have under-remembered this. It's really important. And that's who these people are. Trump and his people, with their like fear about anti-Semitism, this is the most anti-Semitic presidential administration we have had in several generations. These are not people that care about Jews. These are people that either they're Christian Zionists who want us to go back to Israel for some apocalypse fodder so they can have their rapture, or they're people who downright just hate us and use the old anti-communism to bait and imprison and exile Jewish people. So I think that we're at this McCarthyist. Now, this gets overused, but if you think about who Joe McCarthy was, if you think about the terror that was wrought to organizations, to nonprofits, to activist movements during the 1950s and 60s, that the pall that casts on American politics for generations into the future, we're at that moment where they're trying to do the same. Now, we're smarter now. We understand the history, and we're together. So there's some hope. But this is an old playbook.
It absolutely is an old playbook. And I'm wondering if it's going to work, Rachel. I mean, because it's you know, and obviously it's an ugly atmosphere, but it's writ large. Coming out of the civil rights movement, this is to me par for the course. It's like, Daryl, we've seen this before.
Mhm.
And I think that's why whites and black, there is a cultural distance and dissonance, you know, the white reaction and the black reaction, because our experiences are so different, right? We're not different as human beings. We've just had different experiences. And that to me that's something to think about. Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation, we're so glad to have you back. We've been praying for you and your beautiful family. Before we begin, how are you?
Doing well. For anyone who doesn't know, my father passed away a few weeks ago, and so the loss of my father. And I've been spending this time actually since he passed away, going back over his activist history, helping Daniel Berrigan escape the FBI once, an arrest at Cornell University for racial justice. And it's been a really affirming experience for me to lean into that ancestral line of pursuing justice. So I was thinking, as Rachel was talking, I was thinking, this week is as the week of Purim in the Jewish calendar, the Purim holiday. And one of the things about the Purim holiday is it said that everything is turned on its head. And so we have in this instance somebody being arrested for false accusations of anti-Semitism, and this persecution being done as a smokescreen in the name of Jewish safety, while in reality this makes Jews less safe, and it is happening to the backdrop of Nazi salutes, support by our current administration for the Nazi sympathizing party in Germany. So we have Jewish fears of anti-Semitism, which this is meant to trigger, are real. And they're especially real right now as we watch Elon Musk make Nazi salutes, and even the Anti-Defamation League giving him a pass, defending him. And then on the flip, on the upside down side, we have an incredible student activist who was a negotiator during the Columbia protests between the encampments and the administration. And I was reading through, I like to, when these things happen, I kind of go to all right, the worst players, what are the worst things that they're trying to smear him with or accuse him of? And they had nothing. I'm sorry, I looked on Canary Nation and the New York Post, and their biggest charge was dancing in a circle and marching in a kufiya.
That is, I can't believe it. That visual was like, wait a minute. I'm wondering where all this will lead Daryl Jones and Dr. Rachel Ida Buff and Ariel Gold, because it's not going to stop here. But before I pivot to you, Daryl Jones, you and Rachel Ida Buff you've made the point that this makes Jews less safe. Please explain that. Which one of you wants to take the stab at it first? Well, let's start with you, Dr. Rachel Ida Buff.
Well, as Shane Burley and Ben Lorber have argued recently, what makes us safe is when we're around people who like and care about us and who will protect us. So solidarity makes us safe. And Ariel made a really important point about the so-called Anti-Defamation League, which in the earlier part of the 20th century fought anti-Semitism and has now, I don't know, been possessed by the devil / has had a scent of power. They now are so concerned with Israel above Jewish safety, right? We do best historically when we are well networked with our neighbors, Jewish and non-Jewish, right? When we are seen as this special protected class and we act like the special protected class and we only take care of ourselves, that is when we are most vulnerable. When Joe Biden said, without Israel, Jews wouldn't be safe anywhere, I was deeply offended. I have never been to Israel. I have no plans to go. I grew up here. My people came here fleeing pogroms. So he was telling me that I'm not safe here without Israel? What does that mean? I make common cause with people in struggle in my community. I fight broadly for people's rights. I fight against police violence and racism and transphobia. And that makes me safe. And it also keeps me sane during these awful times. Also, Ariel talk, but I think that point about our safety comes through solidarity.
I will add to that And absolutely. And if folks haven't seen it, Ben Lorber and Shane Burley's book, Safety Through Solidarity, is just so incredible. Couldn't recommend something more.
No, very quickly, give me a quick synopsis.
Safety Through Solidarity both looks at defining anti-Semitism historically and in this time, and teasing out what is and what isn't, and making the case that Jewish safety is not achieved through walls and guns and executive orders and ICE and so on. It is achieved through solidarity with all who are oppressed, with others who are minorities. And it is in that large coalition that we, as a small number of people on this planet, achieve our safety. And also, given the way that anti-Semitism works, where Jews are often seen, where there's a conspiracy theory that Jews are at the root of other social movements or orchestrating other social movements. So I want to just speak to like how it actually makes Jews less safe as well. And I've experienced this personally as when you have these false accusations of anti-Semitism just flying around. Somebody, you support Palestinian rights, you must be anti-Semitic. You danced in a circle, I assume they're referring to Dubke, you must be anti-Semitic. When that happens, people become numb to real acts of anti-Semitism. So I know that I've had times that I've gone to like activist friends and been like, whoa, why are you, I want to draw your attention to this actual thing that happened that is anti-Semitic. And they'll be like, oh, please, I've been accused of anti-Semitism for decades and decades. And so it becomes something that people just brush off. And we then lose the ability to have inside our progressive movement the important conversations when anti-Semitism rears its head inside our movement, or when anti-Semitism is heightening, as anti-Semitism is often the canary in the coal mine. And so nothing prevents us from being able to do that more than just flying accusations of anti-Semitism that are nothing of the sort.
I can hear the sticks beating everybody like this. Einstein said, I don't know how the next war will be fought, but I know that the one after that will be fought with sticks and stones. And wow, this to me, Attorney Darrell Jones, I don't see this stopping, Ariel and Rachel, with the Jewish community. I see this bleeding into the American family front. There's so many things that we have been able to do as a family, including disagree. And I'm saying I grew up in a family of 5 kids with my parents, Rachel Idebuff. My father and mother did not raise robots. When people say to me, oh, some of the things you say, Santita, what is your father going to do? I'm like, he's my daddy, not my dictator. All he has ever asked me to do is be able to defend my position. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, he has maybe come over to me and he's, said, okay, I see your point. Or I just see him pivot to another position. But to me, it is very, very unsettling for us to be where we are right now, Darrell. Because if these students who are American and who are also international nationals, right? Because I don't believe in people being foreign. These international students who are permanent residents, if they're in trouble. And now he continues on to say, if you read what he said and read what was written, American students can be arrested and put in jail, if not prison. Now, what is that about?
You're right on it, Cynthia. And for Mahmoud's situation, it goes beyond that, because what happens here is he's arrested there in Colombia at the residence hall that's owned by the university, but then from there he's transferred to Gina, Louisiana. Okay, so they transfer him halfway around the country, and his family is still trying to get in contact with him. And to add on to that, his wife is 8 months pregnant at this point. So you have all of that people are looking at this situation, and if you're a student that's here on the green card or a legal permanent resident, you're asking yourself, do I want to go through that? And that's what the administration wants to have happen. That's the fear they want to stoke into the students that are here. And it's really, very, for, you and I, Santita, when we came through, we had everything dealing with South Africa, South African embassy, all the protests after protests after protests. And never in, our darkest mind, right, the deepest corner of our mind, would we imagine something like this that could happen to some of our students that were from the various countries in Africa that were students with us, that somehow they would have their permanent residency revoked and they could be taken and shipped halfway across the country as to try to figure out what to do. And it just has just an incredible chilling effect on the free speech that it's got to be unconstitutional. And unfortunately, we're going to be waiting for a while. We know that we have one U.S. District Court judge, who's already said in Mahmoud's case that he cannot be deported right now. There has to be a hearing, as Professor Buff was indicating. There's got to be hearings. There's got to be more that goes on here before you can just send someone out of this country because they've exercised that right to free speech. And that's where we are. So even if we end up in the correct place through the judicial and legal proceedings, the impact that it has on other students, they've got to ask the question, do I want to risk going through that too? And that's what the administration is banking on, Santita.
I'm wondering, what about the LGBTQ plus community? Just what about someone who, with all due respect, I love you, Dr. Buff, if you disagree with your professor? See, because this is in college is when things begin to get real, right? And your parents cannot come in and defend you. You have to defend yourself, because there are real disagreements that you have in class with a professor. And if the class is run, in a healthy way, well, you can disagree with the professor. I'm wondering if you get reported now.
Well, I think that cuts both ways, because I know that there's been these right-wing kind of secret sneak attacks where students will record professors saying un-American things and then report them. But I want to loop back to the international students, because there's another piece here, which is that as they have attempted to destroy everything public and defunded public universities so that our students assume incredibly heavy debt burdens because we're tuition dependent. The University of Wisconsin is, we get 11% of our revenues publicly, the rest is tuition driven. So tuition has escalated dramatically, which is a terrible burden on working families. As that's happened, universities have gone around the world trying to draw international students because we double and triple charge those folks, right? That's our revenue. It's kind of this weird inverse colonialism, like come to America so we can rip you off and keep our universities going. As this happens and international students are terrorized, that stream will dry up, right? And we have, so if you put it together, you have defunding the university. That's happened over the last 30 years. You have the immediate violent defunding of Columbia and announced yesterday 10 universities, Big 10 universities, right? Cutting money there, terrorizing international students so they won't come. You have the beginning of the end, legitimately, of public higher education, which is a long-term right-wing goal.
It absolutely is a long-term right-wing goal. And I'm wondering if the left was prepared, or if they really believed that this was going to happen, Ariel.
Yeah, when that arrest,
no, please go on, because it's just
the arrest happened. I was having this conversation with Dr. Zogby, and he was saying, like, why him? There's some students that were poorly behaved, said some things that were really inappropriate, or and why not them, right? Like, why did they go with somebody who, like I said, I kind of looked like the worst they can accuse him of is dancing in a circle and being a negotiator. And so, we thought about it, and it really became clear this is a chilling and nasty they could have gone for somebody who had said things that shouldn't be said, that are still free speech protected.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody who had genuinely said some anti-Semitic things. But no, they chose to go with somebody who is practicing diplomacy, a negotiator, somebody who they didn't have anything like that on, who Canary Mission, boy, and Canary Mission digs deep to write nasty things. They've got nasty things written about me. They couldn't find anything. So this is a message to say this could be any of you, right? They didn't choose somebody who was on a student visa. They chose somebody with permanent residency and a crystal clean, resume.
Mm-hmm.
So this is to say to all of us, I dare you, because we will place you in jail. And it's terrifying. It really genuinely is. I think we are very much back to the McCarthy days. And no, I don't think the left or the movement is prepared. I don't know how we could be, because really these are terrifying times. I've said this before on the show, that in the first weeks of the Trump administration, I did a bunch of re-looking at the early days of the Third Reich. And how quickly that unfolded, and it wasn't then that the left didn't fight back.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in one of these situations where we have avalanche coming at us, and I think we need to come together as the left, and really coordinate and strategize. The Jim Crow didn't get defeated because people just happened to show up in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
It was deep strategy and risk taking, but calculated risk taking. And so I think we really need to lean back into those times and look at what tools we have and how we can act as one, again, in that solidarity. Whoever's being targeted today, it is all of us.
Yeah, I mean, but Daryl, I want you to please make your thought, but also comment here, because I think it's important for us to look at Nazi Germany, Ariel, and Italy, with just full on fascism. But I think it's also, we have had this before in the United States with slavery, and that's a really difficult puzzle. And I only mention that because the Nazis learned how to treat or how to genocide the Jewish population. They looked at the United States. Everybody's been looking to apartheid in South Africa, the United States. German POWs were brought to the United States to resettle. Now, mind you, they have committed these horrific crimes against humanity, and they are allowed to come into the United States, okay? Invited here, brought here. And I say, okay, they've been invited in, and it's like, wait a minute. They came and saw the Jim Crow South and said, there's a book, Hitler's American Model, and other books similar that are coming out now, where they're saying that these German POWs were shocked and appalled at how Black people were treated. They said, whoa, we had Kate Schwab, who was one of our founding members at Operation Push. He just died a few years ago. Bless his heart, he was a Holocaust survivor. And he would almost beat my father to the office on Saturday mornings for our Saturday morning forums. And I can tell you where he sat, right on the front row, bless his heart. And my brother Jonathan had the honor of getting him, and he became like a grandfather, really. And he said, I want you to talk to Mr. Schwab and hear his story, why he comes to Push every Saturday. And he was very much an elder, but if there was a march, he wanted to be on it. So we said, okay, now we can't let you march, Mr. Schwab. Why not? Oh, no. Maybe what we'll do is get a golf cart, something. So you'll be with us. We'll be walking with you. But he said, when I got here, I said, oh my gosh, it's happening again. And if we don't look at what happened in the United States, because my point is, we don't think it could happen here. And I'm like, it's already happened here. J. Edgar Hoover happened here. J. Edgar Hoover and his organization are implicated in the deaths of the major civil rights leaders of almost all of them who died suspiciously. I'm just putting it right there. We better look at our own history. Look at all of these histories. Because it is, Daryl, it can happen like Ariel and Rachel have said, at any time. And we're watching the mission creep. And no one I'm going to switch back to you, Rachel, in a hot second. It's creeping in on us, and I don't even know if we really understand that it's here. Attorney Jones?
No, I think that you're right on it. But I tell you one of the other things, and I think Ariel really touched on it very strongly, and that is this: those of us that are seeing it happen and know that it's coming, and can just feel the force that's coming this way. There's a responsibility there to respond and to react. And what's scary is that the Democratic Party, and I'm just going, Democratic Republican doesn't matter to me. The Democratic Party, they're not reacting. There's not the strong reaction that should be there. I lift up as the example when they did the joint session of Congress, and Congressman Al Green,
Mm.
right, stood up and shook his cane, right, and just said, at that point, he was referring to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that he didn't have a mandate to cut these things. Well, 10 of the Democratic members of Congress voted to censure him for his conduct, rather than censoring what was coming from that podium. And that's part of the issue, is that we've got to be certain that, and I say, Ariel hit it out of the park. We've got to be certain that we have a coordinated, solid response with everyone coming together to push back on this. Because the more quiet we become, the more power they're going to take. And they're not going to be looking to return anything to you. If they get away with what they're trying to do with Mahmoud in this case, and Mahmoud in this case, they're going to continue to roll. And as Professor Buff, Dr. Buff has said, who's going to be next is going to be the only question. Because it's going to continue to roll. They're going to continue to remove until they have what they want, and that is just a base of people that are acquiescent to what the power wants to have happen, and they'll do that in anticipatory compliance, and everybody will not act because they're afraid that they'll be removed. So it's important right now for people to, at a minimum, call your member of the legislature in Congress, the 202-224-3121, and tell them to stand up for this student, for Mahmoud Khalil, as well as, and Santita, I apologize, I always take the moment to do this. I encourage everyone to call Congressman Al Green's office and to say thank you for standing up for democracy. That 202-225-7508 to Congressman Green, because he needs to be called. He needs to know that America has his back the way that he's had America's back. And that's what's happening here, I believe, as well with Brother Khalil, with Mahmoud Khalil. We've got to be certain that we're doing all that we can to be certain that we're holding down the fort, that we're fighting the fight to keep democracy in place. Otherwise, the 14th Amendment will mean nothing. Due process will mean nothing. And that's not the path we want to go down.
I hope it's not the path we want to go. I know that's the path. That's not the path we want to go down. But some people do. I think we need to understand that also. Some people don't mind that. Daryl Jones, would you like to say anything before you go? I know you have a heart out.
So yeah, thank you, Santita. Uh, in closing, my encouragement to everyone is to stand fast. This is not the time to be on the side of the street to watch what happens to Brother Khalil. It's not the time to be on the side of the street to watch other people fighting for our rights and for our country. This is the time for us to stand up as collectively as a group, to call Congress. If you're afraid to stand in the street, make the phone call, send the email, do something to stand up for democracy, because right now it's incredibly under attack. And the only way that we preserve it is if we stand up and fight back. Thank you so much, Santita.
Attorney Daryl Jones, chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition. We're talking about one deportation, Mahmoud Khalil from Columbia University, permanent U.S. resident. But we're also looking at what the president said would be the first of many, many arrests. I put another many in there. And he said that American students will be permanently expelled depending upon the crime. They'll be arrested. That to me is just Dr. Rachel Idabov. I'm wondering what the reaction is going to be.
I mean, look, so good.
No, it's because you have some people who are not afraid. And we need to be mindful of that, Ariel Gold. I mean, a lot of people are like, no, this is unacceptable, and I'm just going to march on it, stand on it, and whatever happens, happens. But I mean, you help me, Dr. Rachel Idabov. I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, because we're looking at this. We're looking at this deportation. Moreover, we're looking at it, and this is for a young man who's not from this country. He's not a citizen. He's a permanent resident, though. But you have Black Lives Matter. We saw that during the post 9/11 period. Thank you, Michael Moore. That the resources were not turned on finding Osama bin Laden as much as they were setting up Black protesters. And I mean, in that movie, you saw a young, well, not so young, group of peace activists, and they were just so gentle and sweet. And it turns out that the person who was trying to goad them into making this a physical confrontation was FBI. I don't even know how to. I mean, what is the solution, Rachel Idabov? Is there a solution?
I think that they've had a long time to think about this stuff. Project 2025 is evil genius in many ways. And one thing that's really clear is that they know where the well springs of hope and inspiration are. I work with students, organizing, teaching, and they're brilliant and wonderful and so foolish, because they're young, right? And they take risks and do these brilliant things. And that is well known in any culture, that if you have universities and you have students, you will have resistance. The nonprofit killer bill that passed before the inauguration, they know that our nonprofits are a source of resistance and support, that support communities, that support underprivileged communities, et cetera, et cetera. They've targeted all of those places. So I think what Daryl was saying about taking any kind of action, I also think that it's really important to think about community fortification and mutual aid. How do we attend each other? Like, I have never felt this way before, but I suddenly feel like it's a political act to have people over to dinner. Like we need to circle our communities. We need to check in on each other. We need to love each other in that very active, Dr. King sense of love. Like love is a verb. Love is an action. Love is resistance. And it's true that lots of people are going to get scared. Lots of people, there are going to be casualties of this time. We're seeing that. But I think one more thing, and then I'll stop. When we look at Mahmoud Khalil and his 8-month pregnant wife, we should be seeing hundreds of people across this country who are prominent, who are not legal residents, who got jerked away from their communities and families. The raids that have been going on, the community raids, the workplace raids, that's been happening since the inauguration. And honestly, really, there was a steady deportation pipeline under Joe Biden. There was this, this is a long-term thing. This has been, their only winning solution is always is hate, is xenophobia. And that is why, since you're always asking what will happen in the future, and I'm a historian and I feel really bad because I'm better about the past, but I will say we will win because our solution is love. We will win. Their solution is hate. That's all they have, hate and division. And I was thinking about it before when you brought up LGBTQ plus rights, like that's something that isn't like all those people live in a neighborhood. That's like, you know, as Obama said, like in his famous speech in the before he was president, you know, in the red states, a lot of people have a queer uncle. You know, like it's not, you can't divide people. You can't always continue dividing people. At some point, love trumps. Oh, terrible.
You know, Ariel, this is to me. This is such a. This is a period in which we, as challenging as it is, Dr. Rachel Adebuff, and Ariel Gold. I think this is the time that people will be open to listening to the call to organize. I see it because, you know, we have a Saturday morning forum. I encourage everyone to see us on the Word Network or go to the rainbowpush.org website. You can catch us online. But you can also, we're going to have to move into the auditorium within the next couple of months. Move back in there because the crowds are getting that big, because people are losing their jobs. I mean, I hate that the misery index is high and continues to rise, and that's going to get people to organize. I mean, I have to tell you, that's one of the gifts of Trump. He is exposing all of, the underbelly of this system. Dr. King, 60 years ago, Rachel Adebuff, said that this was a house on fire. The militarism and the racism and the materialism is killing us. Elon Musk wants to look at everything but the Pentagon while they are flunking audit after audit after audit. But he wants to take food off my table and yours. What is this? We live in a corporatocracy, not a democracy. So Ariel, what are we going to do?
You know,
Because this is like awful. I mean, this man, what is he supposed to do? Leave his child? I mean, who does that? I mean, and what about American students? They'll be expelled from school. Are you serious? Expulsion? Jail? Prison time? What? And then I can't say anything? Will Dr. Buff be safe in her classroom with her purple hair, which is fabulous? I love it. I mean, no, because there will be those kinds of litmus tests. Because you look like you're a little bohemian, which means you're a liberal, you're a lefty. So that's a problem. This stuff, if we keep going down this rabbit hole, Ariel, we don't know what, I mean, we've seen it, and it's going to go to a very bad place. And we're already there. They went and arrested this man and took him away from his wife who's about to have his baby. Who does that?
You know, I want to echo what Rachel said about, and I just so appreciated that, about coming together, about finding community. You know, let's face it, we are out-financed.
Yeah.
We are out-strategized. Like Rachel said, that that Project 2025 and Project Esther, which this is Project Esther in action, are brilliantly evil. But we can't try to use the same tools. What is it they say? Like, you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And so we have to realize, like, where is our strength? If we're out-financed and we're out-strategized, and we're certainly outnumbered right now in terms of the House and the Senate, and
because we've been gerrymandered out of power,
out-strategized, right? But what we have is our radical love, right? Which goes back to Dr. King. It's that radical love. And so we need to counter this, not with anger, not with, rage and those same tools, but with radical love, with radical inclusiveness. And whether those are faith institutions, houses of worship defying the executive order that removed them from being able to provide sanctuary, or it's community groups, or it's dinners together. It's us coming together in beloved community in this dark time. And we have to be careful as a movement not to be tearing each other down and dividing ourselves. We are stronger together, and it is through that radical love that is the only way that we can defeat this.
Well, you're right. I think it is the only way that we can defeat it together. And like you said, have our eyes wide open, not eyes wide shut. You have to look at Nazi Germany. You've got to look at Mussolini. You've got to look at him. You have to look, and you have to look at the institution, this peculiar institution that gave way to, that really taught so many people how to do this. And that happened here in the United States. No one wants to talk about it. But Nazi Germany looked over here and they said, what are they doing to them? Okay. The Afrikaners said, well, how are they doing this? Okay, United States. Everybody looks to us. They look to us for the good, but they look to us for, if you want to wipe out a population and settle there and wait a minute, and not even change Chicago, Illinois. This is these are indigenous names. Oh my goodness. I don't know how indigenous people take it, because the insults are so profound. Everybody, you got to call 202-224-3121. Call Al Green's office. That is the main switchboard to the Capitol. But call these Republicans and tell them how you want to vote. Because a lot of them, I'm going to switch to you, Rachel Ida Buff. I have a brother who's in Congress now. You all know that I talk about it, and I talk to him. And there are oath keepers and proud boys who are roaming the halls of Congress every day. They have been unleashed. And I'm the congressperson who had their sign ripped from their hands and thrown by a colleague. My brother was sitting next to her. He said it happened so fast. He was like, what is going, we don't have any experience in seeing men treat women this way. Yeah, it comes down to that. Okay. But certainly on the floor, when the president's about to come out here, you are ready to have a fight. What? Oh, wow. We got some growing up to do. Dr. Rachel Ida Buff. So I want you and Ariel to close this out, because I'm all ears.
I want to thank you for always pulling us back to the grim past of this country in enslavement and genocide. The Pentagon and those buildings, the kind of expansion of the government after World War II, was literally, this is not a metaphor, they built those buildings on the site of plantations.
Yeah.
So we could say that we are continually haunted by our failure to be a democracy. When people ask me, again, I haven't been to Israel, but, I would think maybe they could try what we're doing so badly at, which is one state, we try and be fair to each other. We're not really setting much of an example, but it's a lovely dream. And it's better than the ethno-nationalist, partitioned, apartheid alternative. Now, we have some work to do. We have a lot of work to do before this. And maybe, here's your silver lining, I do see liberal folks who were hesitant to, for example, criticize genocide under Biden because it was a Democrat perpetrating the genocide, enabling genocide. I do see liberals, as a friend of mine put it, liberals are liberaling again. Liberals are suddenly upset about immigration, even though it was terrible under Biden. But suddenly people are, so, maybe we need to go down into this depth, come back up. And I also want to say, another thing about what's going on is they're throwing out chaos, the volley of executive orders, the volley of horrible offensive things, they won't even use paper straws in the District of Columbia. That is supposed to make us shut down and freak out. And if we can stay present, and it's hard, I have many days where I shut down and freak out and numb out. But if we can stay present, if we can stay with each other and for each other, I do think we win in the long term.
I think that you're right. You know, what did my father say? It's time for us to turn to each other, not on each other. You know, and we might find common cause with some Republicans, everybody. I saw Congressman Burchett, who's ultimately going to vote on this bill, but I've seen him torn about it. He's a Republican from Tennessee. I'm going to interview him on the show. And he was talking about the war pimps. His terms, everybody, you can get mad with me if you want, but you look him up. Representative Tim Burchett. He called the Pentagon war pimps. I had to stop the television. It was like 1:00 this morning after I'd flown in and I was, moving things around. I said, wait a minute, stop. What did he just say? He said, war pimps. He said, yeah. He said, they have flunked, he said, 8 audits. He said, and I'm supposed to pay for that? What? While we're fighting wars everywhere, he said, with our young people, and people are dying. He said, no. He said, I voted for the bill ultimately because, oh yeah, Bernadette is a great name. He said, I voted for the bill because I do want us to he didn't say dismantle. The government we need to streamline. Because we do have some real issues with overspending. We do.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, it's not with people. It's with the corporatocracy, that side. So Ariel, what say you? I mean, because when I hear a Republican talk about war pimps, guess what? I'm going to start listening to him because and Bernadette said, oh, that's a good name because that's what they are. And they're using our children as cannon fodder. And our young people and our husbands, our wives, our partners, all of that. And so what I do have disagreements with him, there's no question about that. But at some point I got to say, wait a minute, if I can agree with you on this piece and we can make some sense here, okay.
Well, Dr. King taught that there are evil systems, there are not evil people. And so again, we have to lead with love. And I'll comment, Rachel was saying she hasn't been to Israel. I have been and was deported for making common cause with Palestinians. And I know.
Why is she on my show? I want to stay on the air. I've got a deportee.
That we are both stronger together, but it's only through each other's liberation that we are liberated ourselves. And I know that, and we can see what is happening collectively to Israeli Jews in terms of this hard turn to the right, in terms of a real hardening of hearts. And the internal damage that does, whether we want to call it the collective soul, but it is only through the liberation of the Palestinian people that the Jewish people can achieve liberation. And that's true for all of us. That's true for white people, through, rejecting racism. It's only through our liberation for all that any of us are liberated. And so we fight together.
Well, thank you for bringing us back to love, because it really is. It's not a suggestion, folks. It's a commandment. Period. And it goes across all religions, all of these artificial boundaries that we have between us, because they really are. It's all cultural and it's all good, everybody, really. We're going to have to grow up in our politics and love each other, really. Love each other and help each other to grow up. And God bless Mahmoud Khalil. I hope he is able to be back here with his baby and his wife. I think that you ought to have America's greatness, Dr. King said, is the right to fight for the right. We can't shut down free speech. You can't, you can't do that. You can't just say you can't talk about this country. You can talk about the United States, but you can't talk about these other countries. I mean, this other country, really? That's just not healthy. And it's, like you said, it's harmful. It's making Jewish people less safe, but it's making everybody less safe. Because some people want to live in fear. And that's really what it is. Rachel Ida Buff, University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. I'm so glad to have you back, my sister. I cannot wait to have you back here on the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio.
I missed you.
Oh, I missed you. I'm here.
Good. Great to be.
I'm right here, my sister, in yours.
Me too.
And you're right here in mine. AM 950 Radio.
Thank
the voice
you.
of Minnesota.